I had this idea a while back, partly because of Porcelain Made, what he said, and partly because I was already going to do this. I think it'd be a fun idea. We're going to have Intro to Monster Studies 101. This is going to be a series of videos, hopefully, maybe, on different monster biology. So biology's kind of where for backstory, I don't have a bio major, but I do have an adjacent major in school, so I can speak upon anatomy. Actually very well, to be quite honest. Anatomy and physiology is kind of where I specialize in. As you can tell by all the extra attachments I put on myself that don't really make any sense. Because where does the rat go that Asclepius eats on a monthly basis? You don't know, I don't know, I don't want to know. There's just a live rat sitting in my stomach, maybe, who knows? Or maybe he got his own stomach, I don't really remember. It's been years. Anyway. Y'all want to get started with this class? Y'all sit down and we get going. Hopefully the music's not too loud. It's pretty quiet. I just kind of want it in the background just to have something. This is the Professor Elm's lab music from Heart Gold Soul Silver. I couldn't really think of anything to use for this other than like fantasy music. I didn't really want to. So, on lesson 1 of Monster Studies, we're going to cover a monster that is, or a cryptid monster / mythological creature. It doesn't have to necessarily be a monster. That's such a derogatory term. But, you know, can fit certain of these. Others will definitely be monsters. We're going to cover the Centaur. All right. Today, we're going to cover Centaurs. What are they? How do they work? Why do they work? Why do they not work? Centaurs are half human, half horse creatures. The top half is a human, the bottom half is a horse. If you don't think about it, it makes sense. If you do think about it, it does not make sense. That's why it's a mythological creature, like me, as a chimera. Maybe I'll do a video on a chimera one day. Who knows? Uh-oh. Anyway. So what is a centaur? I already mentioned this. Many of the Earth myths hail from ancient Greece and Rome, which is where centaurs originally come from, but there are others in other cultures, but we're mainly going to focus on the Greek and Roman versions as they're the most ubiquitous. Maybe other streams, if we do a Kirin, other classes are Kirin, we have to go cover Chinese myth. I think that's Chinese. Anyway, things like that. Like when we cover vampires, we're probably going to end up covering all the vampires. However, today, Greece and Rome is the best bet here. They're effectively, in this culture, more or less wild animals with human intelligence. Now, there are differences. I say differences. There are exceptions to the rule. Chiron, the trainer of heroes in Greek myth, is not one of those. He is the exception that proves the rule. He trains heroes. That's a difference. But, kind of like Phil from the Hercules movie. But, you know, that's beside the point. We're not here for the history. We're not here for that. We're here for the biology of them. Do centaurs hold special powers? They do not. They can do nothing more than what a horse and a human can normally do. The top half is a human intelligence. They can do what they want, like that. You know, full movement of their arms. They can talk. They can have human speech. They have brain power. Anything from the waist up is human. Anything from the waist down is a horse controlled by a human. It's just a horse body. There's nothing different. They don't really have special powers. They're not a harpy that can, you know, fly. I mean, I guess a harpy is really just a bird, but you know, they don't have laser eyes. They don't have extra movement. Well, I guess they have movement speed. They're faster because they're on a horse, but it's a guy riding a horse, okay? It's a guy riding a horse. Now, we might you know what? I will cover. I thought about it. I didn't do this. Nuka-Lavi technically is a centaur by technicality but I probably will cover that a different stream. I'll cover that a different time. Nuka-Lavis are the horse part is more horsey. It's a whole thing. That's gonna be a difference. That's a whole different beast to deal with. All right, so let's start from the beginning. The birth and life. As the centaurs, two halves of two different animals, the birth and life combine aspects of both. I mean, as you can see in this picture, horses mature at a much faster rate than humans. Horses reach maturity at about age 3. Humans do not reach maturity until about age 15. And I say maturity, I mean, they how do I put this? I say maturity, as in like they're mentally there, they can do everything they need to do. Now, granted, I don't really think humans are that mature until about 25. That's just my own personal thoughts. Yeah. But even then, they're not really that mature. Like, I met some really dumb 38-year-olds. So, some really immature 60-year-olds. So, really, it's a debate, but you get my point. A 3-year-old human is much less mature than a 3-year-old horse. So, how does this work? Effectively, the human half will mature at a quick enough pace to match the horse half. Now, you're not going to get a full, like, you won't get a fully grown human half in 3 years, while you normally would get a fully grown horse half in that time. So what'll happen is the horse half will also slow down. So it averages out to be about a centaur is maybe about 8 years old by the time they're like kind of fully mature. Kind of, you know, evens out for us. I didn't really word this properly in the slide. That's okay. But yeah, human and horse half kind of combine into one point at 8 years old. Now, certain aspects of the horse half do mature faster. So, fairy fingers, which I'm not going to post here because that is absolute horror fuel, and I am not posting that. Those still mature at the normal rate. The horses strengthen their legs, and the horses feet mature at a rate they normally would. So, you know, the fairy fingers become the hooves within however long a horse does. I actually don't know. I should look that up, but I did. However, the human half will mature faster to match the horse half, and the horse half will slow down. So the fairy fingers and the legs will probably get the proper strength they need to be to move within the appropriate amount of time, but the rest of the size itself will not reach maximum centaur size until about 8 years. And I say maximum, like the average height. Because maximum could be huge if you're a Clydesdale. If you're a pony centaur, it's going to be tiny. It's up to a Shetland pony. You know, they work like horse breeds, and you can mix and match. It's like a Lego piece. It's a Build-A-Bear, except for centaurs. You know, take that as you will. All right, but this is the fun part. How does their anatomy work? This is a monster of a thing. This is a monster of a problem. Because it's not like the horse half cuts off the back half of the horse. It doesn't cut off here. It does not. It cuts off here. And that's where the issue lies. If the horse half cut off here, it'd just be a satyr at that point with a horse butt. So here's where I had to do some legwork. The centaur has parts from both a human and a horse. Some parts are missing from others, and we'll get into each of the systems, not all of them, but most of them. So obviously we don't have the horse head, so we don't have a horse brain, we don't have a horse nose, we don't really have the horse's sense of smell or taste, that sort of thing. However, the horse half does. Let's start with the human half. The human half from the bladder is missing. The human half, anything from the bladder down is missing. They don't have a bladder. They have kidneys, but they don't have a bladder. They have no bladder. They have no reproductive organs at that area. Certain organs are missing, and certain organs are connected in different ways than they normally would be. And we'll get into each one of those later. But the horse half doesn't have any anatomy above the liver, so they actually don't have lungs. The horse half doesn't have lungs. They have a massive liver and a big heart to make up for that. And we'll get into that system later. We get to the cardiovascular. We're going to start with the spinal cord, though. The spinal cord works like normal. It works like normal in both animals, except it is connected and stretched across two torsos. Effectively, the human sacrum doesn't exist. Like I said, nothing below the bladder, none of the organs below the bladder even exist. The humans have no butt, which means they have no sacrum. However, the human sacrum is replaced with the horse's shoulder joints, because in actuality, and a lot of people don't realize this, human hips and human shoulders are built kind of the same way, not exactly, but they're the same concept. The nerve system works similarly to each other, like the way the nerves are laid out. The way the shoulder blades are laid out, not shoulder blades, sorry, the brachial plexus, which I'm not going to get into that here. That is a beast in and of itself. You can spend 6 weeks studying the brachial plexus, and that's an entire class in itself. The hip joints work the same way. Same layout, more or less. It's just extra, just more to it, because there's more nerves down there. But what happens is that the horse's shoulder, like I said, the horse's shoulder joints shoulder saddle, I guess we'll call it, becomes the human half sacrum. That's where they connect at. It's fused to the horse's scapula, leading it to act as both a hip and a shoulder joint. They act as both. As you can see down here with the horse part, not exactly the same. It kind of goes down here and then does a little hatchback and becomes the legs. So picture this as being the human spinal column, and it attaches here, and we're good to go from there. And everything else behind that point works like a horse does. However, a horse's lungs are here. They do not have lungs, and I'll get into why later. But the sacrum is also widened considerably to make up for the fact that it doesn't it's a weird system. Bone structure, bone structure, we'll start with that. Same bone structure. Human half, bone structure is the same, aside from missing the sacrum and the legs, obviously. The horse, bone structure, same as normal, except doesn't have the horse head and neck, because the neck is the spinal column of the human. The heart. The human heart. The human heart only pumps blood to the human torso. The centaur has two hearts. Which is not that weird when you think about it, because a horse already technically has two hearts, so a horse has three hearts. So the centaur has three hearts now, and I'll get into why it's three later. It's a technical heart, which humans kind of do too, and I'll get into that as well. So the human heart pumps blood only for the human torso. The horse heart pumps blood only for the horse parts. Here's why. If you were to pump the horse blood, not the horse blood, but the horse heart, if the horse heart were to pump blood to the human torso, you would explode. You would just explode from the sheer amount of force and the blood pressure involved. The two systems are separated from each other. They have to be, for the most part. There is a change when it comes to the cardio part with the lungs, but when it comes to the actual vascular, the heart part, they're separate systems entirely, mostly. There's a little difference here later, and I'll get to that later, but right now, two separate things. The human heart, normal-sized human heart, horse heart, normal size. Actually, the horse heart is a little bit bigger, and it's a little bit bigger than normal horse heart. There's more room because there's no lungs in there now. But they're built the same way. Mammal hearts are usually built mostly the exact same way for most mammals. You got your pulmonary artery, you got your aorta with your other tubes coming out. You've got your veins, your arteries. You've got all your ventricles. A horse is built the same way. Exact same way. See? Pulmonary left atrium, right atrium. All the, what are they called? The coronary vesicles, the muscles. Same build. Nothing different. Here's the difference. On the left is the horse heart. On the right is the human heart. Yeah. On the right is the human heart. You see now why this will not fit inside the human torso. And while pumping this will destroy your human body. Because think about it. It's a muscle. The bigger the muscle is, the stronger it is. The human body can only take so much blood at once. This is not Togenanki where you have extra blood in your body. Because that's logic. That's why. That is why this only pumps the horse heart. You can actually fit yourself inside the horse heart. You can probably fit your head in here, to be honest. I don't recommend that, though. Okay. Lungs and circulatory. This gets fun. This does get fun. Only the human half has lungs. But they are larger than average. And I say larger than average. They are no more bigger than a human body could take. Now, granted, the human half is usually a bigger, bulkier version of a human. So it can take a little bit more. And I say this seeing people who, divers. Divers have huge lungs because their lung capacity is so big. They're able to breathe in more oxygen than most humans and can bring in enough oxygen to their bodies. Because they still need to pump it to the rest of their horse half. Thankfully, the secondary horse heart will explain that in a minute. The veins and arteries are bigger, so they can carry more blood. Does not affect the blood pressure, however, they just get bigger. They're bigger, more blood circulates. Not enough to kill the human part, but the human part is bigger to make up for it. The Centaurs RBC, which if you don't know what that is, it's red blood cell count, which WBC, not YBC. WBC is the white blood cell count, but their red blood cell is much higher than a human's, but does not cause issue because their muscles are specifically designed to handle it. Now, the human half is still going to get your normal amount of blood, but the horse's natural enzymes and hormones know to send most of the blood to the horse half. The centaur can send most of the blood they need to their horse half, leading to some horses actually being paler than others. This can cause issues as they get older, and especially in babies, it's not really that big of a deal. The younger the centaur is, it's fine. When they start getting older and the human heart starts having issues, that's when it starts becoming a problem. But here's what I'm talking about the third heart. A horse's legs, as are human legs actually, are considered the secondary heart of the body. You have, I don't have a picture here, but you have in your calves, what are they called? You have, I can't think of the name now. Let me find the name. It's it's in your veins, and they effectively pump blood back to your heart. Every time you step, every time you flex, you pump blood back to your heart. That's why the horse can do what it does, is because theirs are very strong. That's why whenever a horse breaks its leg, you kind of got to put them down, and it's really sad. Because at that point, they can't really live, their heart's going to grow weaker, and it's pointless. They're just going to suffer. I mean, a horse is running on their tiptoes. They're running on a finger. They're running on a big old finger. Which is terrifying as a centaur, because, you know, the human half can still function, which is sad. So you just kind of become a paraplegic, or I guess a quadriplegic, and they have 6 limbs? Yeah, anyway. It's kind of... Centaurs take very good care of their feet. They take very, very good care of their legs and their feet to make sure that they are not going to be broken. They end up having... But that's what helps the centaur deal with the horse heart issue without having a horse heart, because their legs pump even harder. Their legs pump even harder than they need to. Well, not they need to, but than they used to on a normal horse, because you got to factor in there's no heart now. And there's a heart, there's no lungs. Sorry, there's no lungs. I mean, that's it for the circulatory. Oh, yeah. I didn't cover this. The veins and arteries that come from the heart will eventually make their way to the horse part. For the human heart, make their way to the horse heart, and then the rest of the horse body. They don't immediately cover all that area. They go to the horse heart first, and then pump that blood. So making like the actual top of the horse half, where it connects, very, very full of veins and arteries, making it a very dangerous part to attack and hurt. A lot of horses will carry, a lot of centaurs will carry around armor on them on that section just to defend themselves from anything. Because a big cut there could easily take them out. Can easily sever them. It can easily have them bleed out because there's so many there, because it's just a tangled mess of veins and arteries. Because it has to be. All right, liver. Centaurs have 2 livers. Each one works to filter out the portions of each half of the body, meaning, yeah, death by paper cut. Yeah, kind of death by paper cut. Like I said, I didn't do much here. Liver's not that important. I mean, it is a very important organ, but it's not important for what we're doing here. Each liver, horse has a liver, human has a liver. They just filter their own parts of the body, and then eventually make their way through the lymphatic system of both parts into the bladder and the horse bladder, and expelled. The liver's the liver. It does liver things. Nothing really changes. It just have 2 of them now for each part of the body. It's like 2 separate animals that have their own liver systems. All that works the same. I'm not going to worry about that. Kidneys and bladder. The centaur has 2 kidneys, 2 sets of kidneys, equaling 4 kidneys total. I couldn't really find a good picture of the horse kidney, so we're just going to go with this. That didn't involve a very inappropriate image, because I would not like to get... I'm TOS here, guys. Sort of. Where the bladder would be on the human half is nothing more than muscle and fat. They only have 1 bladder. They have the horse bladder, which is massive. I'm glad my head is in the way for that comment, Baku, because yes, I don't want a picture of that on my stream. That's why I'm not covering the reproductive system. The reproductive system is the exact same. It works the same. I'll say the exact same. They have a horse's reproductive system. That's all I'm gonna say. They have the horse's reproductive system, both male and female. Anyway, where the bladder would be on a human half is nothing more than muscle and fat. There is nothing more than just fat tissue there. Which it's mostly where that connects to the horse anyway, so it's a lot of blood vessels and stuff there. The kidneys are much stronger on a human than they would normally be, so a horse can take in a lot more water, because you got to drink a lot more water. So they're drinking a lot more water. The kidneys are much better at filtering and figuring out what to keep, what not to keep. because the horse needs a lot more water. Simple as that. Look at a skeleton. It's kind of terrifying now to look at it. Like, look, the skull on a horse is terrifying. The digestive system. Oh, yeah, well, I guess we'll finish up with kidneys and bladder. There's not much else to talk about. They have two. They just connect. The ureters come from the horse. I'll put it right here, I guess. The ureters go from, like, right where they would, and they just kind of travel down the spine into the bladder where they would get, into the other bladder where they'd go, wherever that's at over here. Digestive systems. This was another issue with the centaur, is that it is two different digestive systems, similar but different. They have two stomachs and two intestinal tracts, each for a different purpose. They kind of function like a horse. Not a horse, sorry, a cow. The centaur kind of functions like a cow, in a sense that it has multiple stomachs to make up for the fact that each stomach can only eat certain items, or certain food things. I have pictures here. The human half obviously does not have a rectum because there is no butt. It connects to the horse butt. I'll explain in a second. The human half. The human stomach functions the same as regular human stomach would. You eat all the same things that you would as a human. You can eat meat, you can eat fish, you can eat candy. Although it's not recommended for a centaur to eat candy. You can drink water, liquids. Most centaurs stay away from sodas, but they can drink water and alcohol, and as much as any horse would. In fact, they drink more than a human would. There is an exception, though. The horse half cannot digest meat. They cannot digest meat because they're an obligate herbivore. Humans are omnivores, meaning we can eat most anything that's not poisonous to us. And I say poisonous, I mean like actual toxic. So like we can't eat like a poison dart frog. We can eat a tree frog though. We can eat a toad. A horse can't. A horse cannot eat that. They just won't do anything. It'll hurt them. So when a centaur has to eat grass or hay, because the horse half needs it, but the horse half has no head. Human half has to eat it. It is not a great process, but they do. The human half has specialized teeth that are able to actually chew it up, and their esophagus are a little bit thicker, so and have special coating to let it all slide down into the stomach. The human stomach and intestinal lining has enzymes that do not absorb these things. Instead, what they do is they coat the grass and hay in this gooey kind of like slippery substance that lets it move straight through the small and large intestinal tracts and goes into the horse's intestinal tract. Now, how does it get there? There is no esophagus for a horse. So what happens is that the rectum of the human becomes the esophagus of the horse. And yes, we have effectively made a centaur centipede. I mean, isn't that what really a centaur is? It's just a centipede with a human and a horse. It's one really long intestine. It just acts like that. Yeah, you're right, Baku. The rectum and the large intestine just continues onward until it reaches the stomach. It becomes a second esophagus. Eventually, the tissue begins to change. So, like, it is the large intestine up to a certain point, because that helps you absorb water. That's actually what causes diarrhea when you're not absorbing water in your large intestine. That's what happens. So it's gonna keep going. So it ends up eventually there is no rectum on a human, so that it kind of just like the large intestine, the cells become an esophagus again, and then enter into the stomach. And from there, then the grass and hay, which is already not digested by the human. Everything the human eats that they can eat will be digested by the human half, and then will be transferred through the muscles and bones and all that. We'll move into the human. We'll move into the horse half that needs the extra food. Now, centaurs eat a lot. They will eat a lot of food because they need it. However, eating meat will actually help the horse half, because while the muscles and bones in the horse half can make use of the meat, of the protein, the intestinal lining can't. That's the problem. So that's why that happens. So that's why it's liquid, not solid. Yeah, that's what happens with the D word. You effectively, your large intestines will not take in liquid. is not taking in the water for a number of reasons. It could be it's a number of reasons that could cause it. You might have C. diff, which is awful. If you have it, go to the doctor, please. As an adult, you won't really die from it, but as a child can easily die from dehydration from it. C. diff is a bacteria that you have. You're supposed to have it in your body. Yeah, I mean, horses are opportunistic carnivores. They will eat carnivorous things, but they're really not going to eat, like, it's opportunistic. Like, if they have to, they will. Like, I don't really see many horses. Like, centaurs, they're just gonna eat. Like, they'll eat what they need to. If they eat, they have to have the grass and hay to do that. Instead of an esophagus, the human colon will stretch down, like we covered that. And then it just goes from there. The coating on the liquid, the coating on the grass and the hay will be dissolved as well. It doesn't really carry any nutritional value, but at least it just helps it. So like it just gets recycled into the body. It gets recycled. There's no nutritional value in that, but there is in the grass and the hay for the horse because they need that. Fruits and vegetables that a horse eats, like an apple or carrot, human half can digest it as well. That doesn't really change anything up. Oh, that's it. So yeah, that's kind of it. The centaur isn't that complicated. It's just figuring out how this part is the hardest part to deal with. It just works like a cow does, where they have to have two different stomachs to filter out what they need and don't need, and two different intestinal tracts. This is a short one. I didn't really have much else. This was kind of slapped together last minute. I hope you all actually enjoyed looking through this though. I'm looking through all this. Like I said, the liver, not much to talk about. We can go. I mean, the horses. We can still cover, I guess, the horse's legs, the skeletal system. I mean, it works like a horse does. They have the valves in their legs that are just much stronger than normal centaurs. I mean, much stronger than normal horses. And yes, I did put this up here because why not? Y'all know y'all like it. Don't tell me that. What is this? You missed it, Koala. I did you missed my class. You're late. You're 40 minutes late to my class. Or 30 minutes, I guess. I didn't start for 10. No, that wouldn't work. Baku. Actually, you know what? We'll field questions now. Koala, so this is my class on Centaur, on Intro to Monsters 101. This is the Centaur. On how a Centaur biologically functions. But Baku just asked the question. The way he always imagined it is he works like a large intestine connects directly to the horse's intestine. Small intestine goes to the esophagus. That would not work.
You're talking too fast. I can understand.
The way Baku imagined it, the large intestine connects directly to the horse intestine, and the small intestine becomes a new esophagus. The issue with that is that can't physically work because the small intestine ends up feeding into the large intestine. So let's go back here. So let's look here. So the stomach attaches to the small intestine, which is all this, and eventually attaches over here into the appendix, which we know what that does. It does nothing, it just hurts you. Then it goes through here. It goes through the large intestine, it comes back down, and then it just attaches to the esophagus, which I don't know why it's spelled that way, but it is. It attaches to the horse's esophagus, what the horse's esophagus would be, and then goes into the stomach. It goes past the lungs, which the horse doesn't have, but it has a much bigger heart to make up for that. I mean, the horse does have it. The centaur half doesn't. It goes into the stomach. So the large intestine, the small feeds into the large, and the large becomes the new esophagus. That's how that would work. Just do the way anatomy works. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense for y'all. Here's just some pictures of centaurs at the end. There are some subbreeds of... Okay, so actually subbreeds of centaurs. Just like a horse, you can get breeds of centaurs. You can get chestnut, you can get the Clydesdale. Clydesdale centaurs are just huge as fuck. They're just massive. You get Shetland ponies, you can get regular horses, anything in between. They work like that. Where do they come from? An unholy union, we'll put it at that. an unholy union. We'll put Centaurs at that.